Have you ever felt like you're fighting a losing battle with your own body? This sensation of being at war with your own physiology is a deeply frustrating and demoralizing experience that millions of people endure every single day. You diligently count every calorie, transforming every meal into a mathematical equation of restriction and denial. You push through punishing workouts, your muscles screaming in protest and your energy levels plummeting, all in the pursuit of a goal that seems to recede further into the distance with each passing week. You deny yourself your favorite foods, the simple pleasures that bring joy and comfort, replacing them with a monotonous regimen of bland, healthy alternatives, only to step on the scale and see the number refuse to budge, or worse, creep insidiously upward. The prevailing wisdom, echoed by countless health magazines, personal trainers, and even well-meaning doctors, tells you that it's all about calories in, calories out, a simple matter of willpower and arithmetic. If you are not losing weight, the implicit and often explicit accusation is that you are failing. You are not trying hard enough. You are not disciplined enough. You are secretly cheating. This narrative, while simple and appealing in its mechanical logic, is not just wrong, but represents a complete and fundamental misunderstanding of the intricate, elegant, and deeply intelligent system that is human metabolism. What if the very strategies you are so painstakingly employing to lose weight are inadvertently sending a powerful, ancient signal to your body to do the exact opposite, to cling to every ounce of energy and store it as fat? The truth is far more complex and hormonal than we have been led to believe. There exists a hidden hormonal switch, a master regulator within your own biochemistry that controls whether you burn fat for fuel or store it for a future famine that never arrives. For the vast majority of people struggling with their weight in the modern world, this switch is flipped in the wrong direction the moment they wake up, setting a disastrous metabolic tone for the entire day. The true secret to lasting fat loss and metabolic health is not found in the Sisyphean task of eating less or the exhausting pursuit of exercising more. It is found in understanding this biological switch and, most importantly, learning how to consciously and deliberately control it, transforming your body from a fat-storing machine into a fat-burning one. The foundational myth that has led so many astray is the idea that fat cells are nothing more than passive, unintelligent storage tanks, simple biological balloons that inflate when we consume an excess of calories and deflate when we are in a caloric deficit. For decades, this has been the bedrock of weight loss advice. But according to Dr. Ben Bikman, a renowned metabolism expert and professor of physiology, this view is a profound and damaging oversimplification. The growth and proliferation of a fat cell, he argues, is not primarily dictated by a mere abundance of caloric energy, but by the commanding presence of a single, powerful hormone, insulin. To illustrate this point in a way that is both visually striking and scientifically irrefutable, Dr. Bikman and his students conduct a remarkable experiment in his laboratory at Brigham Young University. His students cultivate human fat cells, known as adipocytes, in petri dishes. They then bathe these nascent cells in a specially formulated nutrient-rich liquid, a veritable cellular paradise filled with everything a cell could possibly need to not only survive but thrive. This medium is an all-you-can-eat buffet of calories, containing ample glucose, fatty acids, and amino acids. According to the conventional calories in, calories out model, these fat cells, swimming in a sea of abundant energy, should begin to grow fat immediately and uncontrollably. And yet, under these seemingly ideal conditions for fat accumulation, a strange and telling thing happens: nothing. The fat cells remain tiny, lean, and insignificant. They simply refuse to grow, ignoring the feast that surrounds them. But then, the pivotal moment of the experiment arrives. A single crucial ingredient is introduced into this cellular paradise: insulin. The moment the hormone insulin is added to the nutrient broth, a dramatic and rapid transformation begins. The fat cells, which had previously been indifferent to the caloric bounty, suddenly awaken as if receiving a direct and undeniable command. They begin to swell, to accumulate lipids, Within a mere 6 hours, a visible droplet of fat appears inside each cell, a tiny sphere of stored energy. 6 hours after that, the droplet is visibly larger. The cells are getting fat, not because the number of available calories changed in any way, but because the hormonal instruction did. Insulin is the undeniable gatekeeper, the biochemical key that turns the lock on the fat cell's membrane, opening the doors for energy to flood in and commanding the cell to grow. This elegant experiment dismantles the simplistic calorie-centric view and replaces it with a more accurate, hormone-centric one, revealing that insulin is the true, non-negotiable director of fat storage. If a meticulously controlled laboratory experiment feels too abstract or distant from the complexities of a living human body, the most compelling, sobering, and ultimately tragic evidence for insulin's absolute dominion over body fat comes from a real-world human condition. This proof challenges the calorie-centric model in a way that is impossible to rationalize or dismiss. Among the population of young people, predominantly women, with type 1 diabetes, there exists a devastating eating disorder known as diabulimia. These individuals, facing the immense societal and personal pressure to be thin, discover a terrible and powerful secret. The syringe of insulin they must inject to manage their blood sugar and stay alive is also the absolute master of their body fat. They learn, through a horrifying process of self-experimentation, that by deliberately and dangerously underdosing their prescribed insulin, they can effectively hack their own metabolism. They can consume enormous quantities of food, thousands upon thousands of calories, far exceeding what any calorie chart would deem remotely acceptable for weight maintenance, let alone weight loss. And as long as their insulin levels remain artificially and pathologically low, they will not gain weight. In fact, they will continue to lose weight, staying as painfully and unhealthily thin as their disorder compels them to be. This is not a state of health, but a state of profound metabolic crisis. Without sufficient insulin to escort glucose from the bloodstream into the cells, they are chronically hyperglycemic, and their bodies, starving for usable energy despite the abundance of calories in their diet, begin to break down fat and muscle tissue at a catastrophic rate. This process floods their system with ketones, plunging them into the life-threatening danger of diabetic ketoacidosis, a condition where the blood becomes dangerously acidic. They are, in a very real and literal sense, dying. But their emaciated state, achieved in the face of massive calorie consumption, proves a profound and unshakable biological truth. Without the hormonal signal of insulin, you cannot get fat. It does not matter how many calories you eat. If the gatekeeper hormone is not present to issue the command, the fat cells will not and cannot store that energy. This heartbreaking human case study single-handedly and definitively dismantles the simplistic and misguided idea that weight gain is just a matter of calories. It is, at its very core, a hormonal phenomenon orchestrated by insulin. Given that insulin is the unequivocal key to fat storage, the logical question becomes, how do we control it? Many people, in their quest for better health, turn to various forms of fasting, such as intermittent fasting or extended fasting. These are indeed powerful and effective tools for lowering chronically elevated insulin levels and resensitizing the body's cells to its effects, allowing for more efficient metabolic function. However, fasting requires a significant degree of discipline, planning, and adaptation, and it isn't always a practical or desirable long-term strategy for everyone's lifestyle. Dr. Ben Bikman proposes a much simpler, more targeted, and universally applicable approach that he calls the insulin trick. This strategy does not require long periods of food deprivation, but instead focuses on the most critical and influential metabolic window of your entire day, the first few hours after you wake up. What most people fail to realize is that the human body is in a unique, predictable, and remarkably vulnerable hormonal state every single morning. This is due to a natural physiological process known as the dawn effect, or dawn phenomenon, which occurs in every single person, every single day, regardless of whether they have diabetes or not. A few hours before you naturally awaken, typically around 4 a.m., your body's internal clock signals the adrenal glands to begin releasing a surge of cortisol. This is a normal, healthy, and essential process designed to bring your brain and nervous system online, increase alertness, and prepare you for the demands of the day ahead. However, this perfectly natural cortisol surge has a significant metabolic side effect. It instructs your liver to break down its stored form of sugar, known as glycogen, and release it as glucose directly into your bloodstream. It also stimulates the liver to create new glucose from other sources like amino acids. The result of this process, called glycogenolysis and gluconeogenesis, is that you wake up with elevated blood sugar levels even before you have consumed a single bite of food. This pre-existing elevation in blood glucose makes your body's cells, particularly your muscle cells, temporarily more resistant to the effects of insulin. Any food you consume during this sensitive window, especially food rich in carbohydrates, will therefore provoke an exaggerated and prolonged insulin spike, making it far more likely that the calories from that meal will be shuttled directly into your fat cells for storage, rather than being efficiently used for immediate energy by your muscles and brain. Understanding this intricate morning metabolic trap is the absolute key to outsmarting it and setting yourself up for a day of fat burning rather than fat storing. The first step of Dr. Bickman's proposed insulin trick is breathtakingly simple, yet profoundly effective. Wait. Instead of following the deeply ingrained modern habit of stumbling out of bed and heading straight for the kitchen or the coffee pot, give your body a small but crucial window of time to navigate this natural hormonal wave. Your body has already, through the dawn effect, provided you with a readily available burst of fast-burning energy in the form of glucose circulating in your blood. The intelligent response is to use it. Spend the first 20, 30, or even 60 minutes of your day doing something other than eating. This could be planning your schedule for the day, engaging in some light household chores, going for a short, gentle walk in the morning light, doing a few minutes of stretching, or diving into some focused work. Many people find their brain is at its peak of clarity and creativity during this unfed window, so it is a perfect time to take advantage of that heightened cognitive state. This simple pause, this act of intentional delay, allows the initial cortisol and glucose surge to begin subsiding naturally. The metabolic noise in your system quiets down, creating a much more stable and favorable hormonal environment for your first meal of the day. When it is finally time to eat, the second equally critical step is to completely transform your concept of breakfast, moving it from a rushed, carbohydrate-laden chore into a mindful, metabolically intelligent ritual. The typical modern breakfast, a bowl of cereal, a piece of toast with jam, a sugary pastry or sweetened yogurt, is tragically the worst possible thing you can eat. It is essentially a serving of dessert, a pure load of sugar and refined starch that hits your already insulin-resistant system like a tidal wave, causing a massive and prolonged insulin spike that screams "store fat" at your body. Instead, commit to changing your breakfast tomorrow. Opt for a meal that is rich in high-quality protein and healthy fats, two macronutrients that have a minimal, almost negligible impact on blood sugar and insulin. Think eggs cooked in butter with a side of avocado, bacon, or sausage, or a protein shake made with unsweetened protein powder, a healthy fat source like MCT oil, and water or unsweetened almond milk. As you eat this new kind of breakfast, slow down. Pay attention to the smells of your food, the sounds of its preparation, and the physical sensations of eating. This mindful approach helps to shift your nervous system out of a stressed, sympathetic state and into a calm, parasympathetic state of rest and digest, further optimizing your metabolic response. This simple two-part trick helps to reset your metabolism from a mode of stress and fat storage to one of calm, sustained energy, setting a healthier and more fat-friendly hormonal tone for the rest of your day. Beyond your immediate food choices in the morning, there are two other powerful and often unseen saboteurs that can completely derail your morning metabolism, amplifying the negative effects of the dawn phenomenon and making fat storage all but inevitable: poor sleep and your morning coffee habit. Your cortisol levels are intimately and inextricably tied to your circadian rhythm, the internal 24-hour clock that governs your sleep-wake cycle. When you fail to get a sufficient amount of high-quality sleep, typically 7 to 9 hours for most adults, your body perceives this deficit as a major physiological stressor. In response to this perceived threat, it can overproduce cortisol, sometimes releasing 2 or even 3 times the normal amount in a dysregulated pattern the following morning. This amplified cortisol spike leads to a much greater release of glucose from the liver, resulting in higher morning blood sugar and a more severe state of insulin resistance than you would normally experience. Furthermore, this hormonal chaos has a direct and potent effect on your brain. The excess cortisol readily crosses the blood-brain barrier and stimulates regions in the hypothalamus and amygdala that govern hunger, cravings, and reward-seeking behavior. It simultaneously cranks up the production of appetite-stimulating hormones like ghrelin, making you feel ravenous, while also blunting the effect of the satiety hormone leptin. To make matters worse, it enhances the dopamine-driven pleasure hit you get from eating hyperpalatable, high-energy foods. In short, a bad night's sleep all but guarantees that you will wake up significantly hungrier, with intense, almost irresistible cravings for the very sugary and starchy carbohydrates that will do the most metabolic damage in your already compromised morning state. Even your beloved and seemingly harmless cup of morning coffee can be a significant part of the problem. While often viewed as a non-negotiable morning ritual for productivity and alertness, the caffeine it contains can significantly and negatively impact your insulin response. A wealth of scientific studies have demonstrated that when caffeine is consumed alongside or even before carbohydrates, the body needs to produce a much greater amount of insulin to clear the same amount of glucose from the blood. In the specific context of the morning, when your cortisol is already high, and has pushed extra glucose into your system, adding caffeine into the mix can create a perfect storm for an insulin overreaction. This happens even if you have not eaten anything yet. The combination of naturally high morning cortisol and the stimulating effect of caffeine, which can itself trigger a further cortisol release, primes your body for aggressive fat storage before your day has even truly begun. A simple strategic shift, such as holding off on that first cup of coffee for an hour or two until after the initial hormonal peak has passed and you have potentially eaten your protein and fat-rich meal, can help to keep your hormones in a more favorable balance and prevent this early and critical metabolic damage. At its heart, the wisdom imparted by Dr. Ben Bikman and encapsulated in his Insulin Trick is about developing a new kind of intelligence, a hormonal intelligence. It is about moving beyond the simplistic and frustrating world of calorie counting and embracing a deeper understanding that your body operates on a predictable, rhythmic, and elegant daily cycle. The morning is the single most powerful leverage point in this entire cycle, the one time of day when you can anticipate with near perfect certainty how your key metabolic hormones, cortisol and insulin, are behaving. Later in the day, the hormonal landscape becomes far more complex and unpredictable, influenced by the varied composition of meals, the timing of physical activity, acute stressors, and a multitude of other factors. By consciously and intentionally getting your morning right, you set in motion a positive metabolic cascade that profoundly influences your appetite, your food cravings, your mental clarity, and your body's energy usage for the entire day that follows. A well-timed, properly balanced, protein and fat-forward first meal acts as a powerful signal to your body, instructing it to start burning its own stored fat for fuel instead of desperately craving and hoarding incoming carbohydrates. This is not presented as an overnight miracle cure or a dramatic, overly restrictive diet that is destined for failure. It is a subtle but powerful foundational shift in your daily approach. It is a fundamental change in perspective that puts your body into a physiological state where losing weight becomes far easier, more natural, and more sustainable. This knowledge empowers you to finally stop fighting a futile war against your own biology and instead begin to work in harmony with it, leveraging its innate rhythms to achieve the health, energy, and body composition you desire. It is a paradigm shift from blaming a lack of willpower to embracing the power of biological wisdom, starting with the very first and most important decisions you make each and every morning.